Pasuk Yud, Parshas Kedoshim. Char Mechodos Oleo. Your vineyard, you're not permitted to take they're not clusters, but grapes that are left on the branch, on the vine. So Rashi himself cites the Mishnah Pei of what's exactly considered olos, losita olo shebo, ve'nikoros eze olos. Meaning it's like leftover, it's like remnants on the vine. Koshe lo kosef lo notif, whatever it is. It's giving you the physical way the looks. It's not a cluster of grapes, but it's like grapes just on a stem, which is left on the vine. Operet karmacho lo salake, and the peret. Garga novim hanoshir b'shas b'tzira. He says, what about as they pick grapes? Grapes fall to the floor accidentally. We're not talking about when you harvest. Sometimes they shake the vine and the grapes fall on a mat. We're not speaking about that. As they're picking, instead of the grape going in the basket, it falls on the ground. Those grapes you have to leave for the poor. That's peret. La'oni v'lager tazavosam. So the two. There's a negative commandment. You're not permitted to take it. And there's a positive commandment. La'oni v'lager tazavosam. You must leave it for the poor or the convert, because he's also considered poor because he has no share in the land. Ani Hashem Elokechem. Rashi, Ani Hashem Elokechem, din li pora, meaning you'll be culpable. Ve'enogove mikem el nefoshos. And the liability will be, God will take your life. Why? Shenema al tigzel dol. You should not steal from a poor person. Ki Hashem yorev rivam. Hashem will take up the fight of the poor person. The person is helpless. So naturally, people take advantage of the poor person. He's victimized. And as a result of that, Hashem says, I will take up his fight. The kova is kovev nofesh. And the pasuk concludes that I will take his soul for that. That's how extreme the Hashem's response will be. Because he takes advantage of a person who's helpless, the poor and the convert. You know, it's interesting. There's a pasuk in Koheles that Shlomo says, Elokim yivakish nirdov. Hashem, Elokim, seeks out the one who's pursued, the pursued one. The person is pursued, Elokim yivakish nirdov. So the Chazal tell us, and there's a famous word from the Shalom Kodesh, that even the Midas Hadin, which normally nobody's perfect enough that the Midas Hadin should not come and prosecute, even the Midas Hadin will agree that the pursued deserves mercy because he's nirdov, because he's a pursued. And we explained, we showed from the Chazal, and this is in Parshas Emor, we didn't get there yet, that a nirdov is a person who's exhausted every opportunity to be saved. He has nowhere to turn. There's nobody to rely on. That's a pursued person, because a person, when he's in that state of pursuit, he comes to a recognition that the only one he has to rely on is Hashem. And when a person comes to that level of understanding, even the Midas Hadin will not prosecute that person, even though he's not perfect, because the tshuva is so perfect, is so pure, because he's attached. At that moment, he realizes everything is Hashem. And when you come to that realization, you're even protected from Midas Hadin. So that's over there, it's based on the recognition of the person, because he's a nirdov. Over here, we're speaking about something else. The person is oni. He's a poor man, he's a convert, he has nothing. And he's being victimized. A person's taking advantage of that person's financial state, and therefore, he doesn't leave for him what he should leave for him. Hashem says, Adi Hashem Elokechem, I will take up his fight. But seemingly over there, it's not because the poor man has come to a level of recognition as the nirdov. The nirdov, you can be a rich person, you can be a poor person, let's make who you are. If you're a nirdov, if you're pursued, you come to that level of realization And because you come to that level of realization, therefore you're protected from Midas Adin. However, over here, the poor man, it's not necessarily it comes to any level of recognition. Nevertheless, Hashem says, as he says, Hashem Yoriv Rivam. It's Posuk in Mishlei. Hashem will take up his quarrel. V'kovetz kaveim nofesh. So I think over here it's a whole different concept. We say, David Melch says, and we said on Shabbos, Leiv nishbor v'nitke elokim lo sivzeh. A leiv nishbor, a broken heart, nishbor v'nitke, smattered, elokim lo sivzeh. So we mentioned in the past, for the name of the Shalom Kodesh, that if a person is broken and smattered, even the Midas Adin will not prosecute that person. What's the reason? So he explains, a kli is makabel tumah. If something's a vessel, it's subject to spiritual contamination. If you break the kli, even it's a kli cheres, even it's an earthenware kli vessel that you can't put in the mikveh, but once it no longer is classified as kli, as a vessel, something which is functional, even though initially it was contaminated, it's relieved of its contamination because it's broken. So he says, a broken heart, a smattered person, because he's no longer the kli. That's the reason why. So it's not necessarily because he's come to a level of recognition. Because since the person destroyed that person, and the person's been like negated to such a level, as a result of that, that's the reason why Elokim lo sivzeh, even misadin. So here we're speaking about, you have a poor person, he doesn't have, and Torah says you must leave for him the gleanings or the corner of the field. And you go and you don't. But how do you not? Don't you have where's your conscience? How do you not? The answer is because you take advantage. Who are you taking advantage of? Of nidke v'nivzeh. Nishba a smattered, broken person. As a result of that, if Elokim lo sivzeh, that person is worthy of all the rachmim. And the rachmim is Hashem reacts, and that's what we're speaking about over here on the Hashem Elokechem, for that reason. One of the example of Elokim Mivakish Nidov is Moshe Rabbeinu being pursued by Paro. Because Moshe killed the Egyptian, he became a fugitive and he had to flee from Egypt. And he was out of Egypt for 60 years. Till he came back as the Goel. And it says, and Moshe is an example of Elokim Mivakish Nidov. Why? Because we find by the time of the Chet Egel, that the reason, it's based on the Pasuk in Tehillim, the reason why Hashem accepted the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu, when he supplicated on behalf of Klal Yisrael, the Chet Egel, he did not destroy us, was because Moshe Rabbeinu was a nirdaf from Paro. That's Elokim Vakish nirdaf. Could you imagine? He was out of Mikavodim, whatever he was. He was chosen to be the Goel. So at the time of Chet Egel, where there was unlimited prosecution against us, and Hashem said, I will destroy them, the reason why he did not, because Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah, but Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah had that special value, because Elokim Vakish nirdaf. Because he was a nirdaf, therefore he was at that special level. That's the medrash. Take a look, we'll look, it's in Parashas Emor in the Yalkut. So something always bothered me, which I mentioned in the past. Doesn't Aviram, they were bad guys. Eventually, they went down with Korach. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, and they were the most defiant. And according to the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, he points out that the ones who instigated Korach was Dosan Aviram. They were the worst of the bunch. Dosan Aviram, they informed the Moshe Rabbeinu. They began all the problems. They informed him that he killed the Egyptian. although he's the beloved grandson of Paro, adopted grandson, he had to flee. And only due to miracles he was saved. And his life was miserable, detached from Klal Yisrael for all those years. Moshe Rabbeinu comes back. They're still the ultimate level of troublemakers. With the Mun, continuous, repeatedly. They tried to undermine, usurp his authority. And Moshe Rabbeinu tolerated. He put up with him. What happened? Hashem says, you could go back because Mesu Hanoshim, because those who informed on you, they're no longer alive. So the Gemara in Dara asked a question, what do you know? It does not are very well alive. Continue, we see that there, some says, from here we learn that initially the only reason why they were able to inform on him, because they from the wealthy class and they had certain relationships in the higher echelons of the Egyptian government, therefore they're able to inform on Moshe Rabbeinu. But now that they became impoverished, they no longer had those connections. Therefore Hashem says, Mesa Kol HaNoshim, those people informed are no longer alive, because Ani Choshev Kemes, therefore you could return. I mean, what do you mean, Ani Choshev Kemes? Hashem should have taken them out. They did something so terrible, Hashem should have killed them, taken their lives. Hashem didn't take their lives. Hashem impoverished them, which is the equivalent of that. But look at all the trouble they're making. That's number one. Secondly, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's status? The Gemara says in Shuas he was a melech. His status was he was a king. If you defy an order of a king, even though it normally doesn't carry liability, death penalty, but if you defy his word, he has a right to put you to death. If he tells you to wear a red bow tie and you put on a green bow tie, the king has a right to take that person's life because that was a disrespect to the king. I mean, if you talk about the relationship between Dasna Avir and Moshe Rabbeinu, of course the king could pardon the person. I mean, if these people are the ultimate troublemakers, they're a bone of contention continuously, Moshe Rabbeinu should have ruled, take him out, put him to death. But Moshe Rabbeinu tolerated them till the end. Why? It's a question we asked in the past. That was, Moshe Rabbeinu understood, and Hashem could have taken them out, and he didn't take them out. What does that mean? That means because Moshe Rabbeinu was a nirdov, was a pursued, he was able to achieve the level that he achieved. As a result, and that's why Hashem did not take out Dosan Vavirim. As extreme and as unconscionable that behavior was, Hashem did not take them out. Because they were the cause of Moshe Rabbeinu to rise to the level that he rose to. And ultimately, at that point, Moshe didn't understand. But even when it came to the Chet Egel, if not for Moshe being at that special level, his supplications wouldn't have been sufficient. They were only because he was a Nirdav. Who caused him to be the Nirdav? Doesn't have Avira. As a result of that, there was a Hakoras HaTov. Because of that Moshe, until Hashem takes them out, Moshe leaves them. He tolerates, puts up with them. I was thinking, there was a Rashi, a very difficult Rashi, says, Lo Sasaiv Mitzri Vadomi. You can't mistreat the Egyptian and the Edomite. Why the Egyptian not? Ki Gerim Hayisim in Mitzrayim. Because you were Gerim, you were strangers in Egypt. So Rashi says over there, because they provided for you your domicile. In the years of exile, you were in their land. And because they provided the domicile for you, therefore, Hakoras HaTov, therefore you can't mistreat the Egyptian. We're talking when he converts. When the Egyptian becomes a Jew, since his pedigree is Egyptian, and they provided that they were the host country, therefore you can't. And what kind of host country were they? We were free people enslaved. We were killed, tortured, persecuted for all those years. And financially, they had tremendous gain from us. Nevertheless, there is an obligation, Hakoras HaTov. We have to acknowledge we're beneficiaries of their hospitality, that the offer is they were the host country. So you see, to what degree you have to be Makatova, that even though it was a Gehenna, worse than a Gehenna, but since that's where we incubated to become a Jewish people, therefore, you can't mistreat the Egyptian and therefore, even 3 generations, he's not permitted even if he converts only the 3rd generation, but that's all Hakor Satov. What's it all about? Where did we become a Jewish people? It's a similar concept. We had to go to Egypt. It was only because of Egypt. That circumstance allowed us to incubate that after so many years, we're able, the Torah refers to Egypt as Kura Barzel. That was the crucible. Because that was the Kura Barzel, after so many years, we were able to go to Sinai. If we wouldn't have had that experience, they wouldn't call for to go to Sinai. Therefore, that circumstance, as bad as it was, there's a degree of Hakor Satov. Because we only became what we became because of that. So that we don't understand, but that host country provided, despite the pain and suffering, provided us to be in a situation that we're able to rise within a short period of time to go to Sinai to become the chosen people. A similar concept.
Rabbi, could you say, I'm sorry, could you say